Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch, being joined by David Wolman. Just a two-man show for today. Devin feeling a little bit under the weather. David, it is a Monday morning. It is 11:30 on the docket. How are you feeling this morning, man?
I am feeling fantastic. Tom Brady's going to another Super Bowl.
Yeah, that was a fun time yesterday, was it not? For those who don't know, both David and I, we're both New England transplants who are diehard Boston sports fans, and it's been a very, very conflicting time for Patriots fans just because of what's happened with Tom Brady down in Tampa. So I don't know. I'm not going to speak for all Patriots fans, but I mean, I loved yesterday. That was so much fun to watch. Getting back there for the 10th time, just what a career, man. We don't deserve Tom Brady.
I feel like that Waynesville. We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
It's incredible. Just when you factor in just everything that went into this year, just with not even getting a preseason in, a brand new team, a brand new offense, and nothing changes.
No, same old Tom.
So yes, fun times outside of all this for us. But for today, obviously on the menu is talking a little bit of high school basketball. So when we think, after last week, we were just playing a little bit of catch up, just trying to touch on a few of the notable subplots from the first half of the season. Well, now we're going to kind of narrow the scope and focus more so on what has happened, I guess, within the past week, and then we'll do a little bit of a look ahead to what's going on later on this week. I know, David, on your plate last week on Friday was a very high-profile game out in District 6A, and that's where we can start. You kind of previewed this a little bit last week on the podcast, but Coppell and Marcus, the highly anticipated rematch between the top two teams in District 6A on the boys' side. Marcus got the better from the first go around. There were some mitigating circumstances with the sort of schedule that Coppell was on at the time. So when you're under a far more standard routine heading into Friday's rematch, what sort of difference would there be? And it sounds like it mattered at least somewhat because Coppell returned the favor, and they returned the favor. I guess the final score, sounds like a bit of a closer game. Otherwise, it sounds like though Coppell was in pretty firm control of this one for most of the way. What was it, 58-54?
58-54.
So, obviously you were courtside. So, if you kind of put yourself back in that gymnasium over there at Coppell, that very nice gymnasium.
Love that gymnasium.
It is right there with the best that we have in our coverage area. So what were kind of the big takeaways from this one? What was Coppell doing that was so effective, and how did they kind of take control of the district race in this one?
You go back in this game, and it was just an amazing game to watch from both sides. Even though Marcus, they lost by 4 points, you got to feel good about the way that Marcus competed in this game, because there's a time in this game where it looks like Coppell could have just blown the water out of him. Marcus got up by 2 points. Like Nick Donnelly, he was having an incredible night. It seems like he just couldn't miss it all, their point guard. He scored 31 points that game, too. Wow. Even when they got down by double figures, like you hand him the ball, he's going to find the open spot on the floor, and he's going to knock that down. But the big play, Anthony Black, if there's one play that really defined this game, it was like he made a three-pointer with like no time left in the first quarter. Okay. And it was kind of a broken play, too. I asked him about this game, and he said that the play was originally designed to go to his teammate, Nazir Brown, who's been absolutely fantastic ever since he's come over here from LD Bell. And obviously I didn't think he was going to have too much of a problem with chemistry, because he's played with Anthony Black, he's played with Devon Gray, and he's played with Ryan Agarwal before. They're both on the same AAU team, so I figured their chemistry would be instant. But on this particular play, he was trying to get him some ISO, and I think Marcus broke it up. And fortunately, Black got the ball, and he just kind of did like a running three-pointers. Time expired. Okay. Boom. Coppell goes up by a point after the first quarter. After that, Coppell went on a 15-0 run right there. And then the first basket of the second quarter, Black, like I said, he made that three-pointer to end the first quarter. He makes another one, not from 3 points this time, but he makes an alley-oop dunk that Nas throws him. Yeah, does Anthony Black shoot a lot of threes when you've seen them? He'll shoot maybe around 3 or 4 threes a game.
Okay, I was wondering, because I know the athleticism is off the charts, and I'm used to seeing him use that length to throw down some pretty nice stuff at the rim. But I just, in the times that I saw them last year, I don't recall the three-pointer being as prominent a part in his game.
He's a hard worker, man. This kid, I think he's trying to show that these college scouts right here that, he's not just like a player who can just slash. He can shoot it from three-pointer as well, too.
He was very, very versatile, very well-versed player.
Yeah. So, he finished the game with 23 points.
Okay, wow.
He was incredible.
They can hit you from so many ways, man. Either one of those three can go off for 25 a night. It's such an embarrassment of riches that Coppell has.
Yeah, and like I said, Coppell, they won about 15, 16 points in the second quarter.
Okay.
And obviously you think, okay, Coppell's going to run this game going away. But you know what, like Marcus, like they just kept fighting and fighting. Cale Martin's their 6'6" center. Yeah. Like he had like 6 or 8 points there late in the second quarter, and they only trailed by 6 points at halftime after all that blitzing that Coppell was doing. And the thing that Coppell was not only doing besides what Black was doing on the court, they were deflecting a lot of shots. They're blocking shots as well, too. So, I think that kind of like caught Marcus off guard a little bit. Just that, like, the activity right there around the rim. So, like, they got up double digits, and then Marcus did a great job of weathering the storm, and they actually cut it to 3 points with, like, about 4 or 5 minutes left in the game. And then Coppell just finished the game at the free throw line.
Really?
Marcus was like already committed 7th foul of the second half. So Coppell, like, they were just kind of playing a little bit of a stall game to get them get themselves on the free throw line.
Okay.
And obviously you like with that much time left and it's still a 3-point game, you've got to give. That shows you how much confidence your head coach has in their players out there to knock down free throws.
Sure.
So in the last 401 in that game, they shot 20 free throws.
Goodness. How long did that take?
I was kind of worried about my deadline right here. I'm like, guys, I got a story to write here.
Oh, goodness.
So, and they went 15 of 20 at the free throw line during that span.
Wow, that's clutch. That's really impressive.
Huge.
Yeah.
And who was I mentioning before? Niles Brown? Mm-hmm. Mr. Fourth Quarter. Oh, yeah. Like, you remember that game against Louisville? He scored 18 points. This guy right here, he had 12 points against Marcus in the fourth quarter.
Wow.
And he only had 1 field goal. The rest of them were free throws. He went 9 of 10 at the free throw line in the fourth quarter.
It sounds like they did a lot of stuff that the times that I've seen Marcus this year. You mentioned the activity and on defense and disrupting stuff at the rim. Getting in passing lanes and whatnot. That's kind of been one of the staples of what Marcus has done in amassing this run that they've gotten on this season. Because obviously Donnelly is a traditional point guard in that sense. He's got a great shot, but he's really the floor general type for them. Martens is a huge presence for them down low, but they've got so many other guys that are all kind of interchangeable that can do a lot of different things, whether it's post up, handle the ball, shoot. Guys like Zane Hickey, Luke Smith, Brock Susko. They have a lot of length and size and versatility that kind of gives Coach Shane Rogers a lot of options at his disposal. And you've seen a lot of times that's kind of what they're able to do is really throw teams off their rhythm by using that length to disrupt things on defense. So it sounds like Coppell just kind of made kind of put Marcus in a bit of kind of took him out of their comfort zone a bit, because that's not a Marcus team that's really had to fight back from too many massive deficits this season. So, but yeah, that's with with Coppell, you have those players like Black and like Ryan Agrawal, who they have that proven experience as far as winning these high stakes games, as you saw last season en route to a back-to-back district championship. So for them to pull out a game of this caliber, I wasn't surprised. It's just they've been there, they've done that, and it's just this is just another day in the park for them versus a Marcus team that is still kind of trying to figure out how to win games of that caliber. They've been awesome this year. I don't know, I guess what expectations might have been internally as far as them potentially contending for a district title. I know they had a lot of continuity from that team last year that sort of made a late surge to qualify for the playoffs and whatnot. But it's been a strong year for Marcus. But Coppell, though, is they're still the standard bearer right now in District 6A, as they've been though for the last I guess they're now in the driver's seat for a third consecutive district championship.
There's the one game ahead of Marcus, and the only reason because that's Flower Mound. They're crosstown rival.
It is wild, and I did kind of want to now talk a bit about kind of what this means elsewhere in the district, because we know who 1 and 2 are right now, and at the same time, though, you look at the number of close calls that both Coppell and Marcus have had, even prior to playing this game on Friday, and there's really no chance to rest on your laurels in any capacity, because Marcus, their only other loss in district play came to last place Flower Mound in a game that was 30-28. So again, don't know if that was one where they were just kind of pounding the air out of the ball and maybe taking advantage of there not being a shot clock in high school basketball in Texas. But nevertheless, though, the Jaguars were able to get a 30-28 upset over Marcus, and all of a sudden now that might be the difference between splitting district championships and Coppell winning it outright for the third straight year. So yeah, it's been wild though, this district, because it really doesn't feel like there is any one matchup that you can just chalk up as, okay, well, it's going to be a cakewalk for Team A over Team B. Yeah. I mean, so, kind of looking elsewhere beyond Coppell and Marcus. So Coppell right now is 7-1 in district play. Marcus 6-2. Elsewhere, it's a little bit that middle class is a little bit clustered. You've got Louisville at 5-3 in third place. Then you have a tie for fourth between Hebron and Plano East. A nice little resurgent year for Plano East under head coach Matt Wester. They are both 4-4, and then one game back in sixth place is Plano, who qualified for the playoffs last year as a 4 seed. The just kind of looking at kind of the way that these four teams are trending, the big winner last week was Louisville. It's been kind of an interesting year for the Farmers. Obviously, they made some headlines in the offseason following the transfer of reigning district MVP Keontae George, who still plays basketball in Louisville, but he plays for the I School of Louisville, a program that plays a kind of a national schedule. So he opted to transfer there in the offseason, and all of a sudden now, kind of the engine to that Louisville offense, because he was our all-area MVP last year. He was, I think he closed the year with 30 points in his last 4 or 5 games. He's one of the top players in the country for a reason, and you saw that last season. But he's now playing elsewhere, so what does that mean for Louisville? They actually got off to a pretty encouraging start. They were state ranked for a good chunk of the season, and then they hit a little bit of a spell there midway through district with losses to Coppell, Marcus, and then one to Hebron. So a team that really hadn't incurred any sort of adversity in that sense. How are they going to work out of this little rough patch? And they've done so, though, with 3 straight wins. They beat Plano West, and then last week they beat Plano East, obviously, which looms large considering the East is just one game behind them in the standings. And then they followed up with a close win. They had to rally a bit, but they were able to then top Flower Mound, I believe, on Friday, 56-51. Kylan Green has kind of picked up the slack as far as taking the reins as their go-to scorer. He was kind of the number 2 last year behind George, but he was still getting you a good 18-20 a night as a nice little plan B, versus George's plan A. But he's now taking the reins there, and the big thing during this stretch is the contributions they're getting elsewhere, because that was one thing that was, you look throughout that depth chart, and there's really not a whole lot of just proven varsity minutes within that rotation. But you see now during this stretch that it's not just Kylan Green. Against Flower Mound, he also got 19 points from Adrian Banks, who I believe is just a sophomore, their point guard. And then in the win against Plano East, you had Traylon Green had 16 points, Kylan had 11, Will Curtis had 10, Adrian had 9. So when you get those sort of balanced contributions, it makes them, I just think that elevates their ceiling so much more when it's not just Kylan Green that's having to shoulder the load and get you 25-30 a night. So they look to have, at least for the time being, kind of righted the ship a bit. And then with Plano East, they've been they've been a nice fun little bounce back story. They were sort of on the cusp last year of maybe breaking through and getting into the playoffs for the first time under Coach Wester, but they fell short. I believe it might have actually been on the final night of the regular season, but they were in the hunt, deep into the year. But they've now climbed to 500, and actually, if the playoffs started today, they would get that last playoff spot by virtue of a head-to-head win on the road over Hebron. I was at that game. It's actually a really good game. This East team, they really do kind of hang their hat on defense. The shooting is a little bit spotty and whatnot. They're not the biggest team, so those taller front courts are going to overwhelm them. And that's one thing you saw at least a little bit as far as how Hebron was able to make that game a bit closer down the stretch was the work that some of their big men did. But they've got some solid experience there with Connor Johnson and Isaiah Hyman, Damian Gunnels, who's a standout on the football team. He gives them a nice shot in the arm on defense. They've got this sibling backcourt of Brandon and Deuce Hardison, some real crafty ball handlers that can make some nice finishes inside. It's a fun little team. And they've had a nice little resurgent season so far. They went 1-1 last week. They did, however, get to avenge a loss to Plano West from their district opener way back when. Man, West ran them out of the gym in that opener, and then East was able to return the favor, beat them 58-50 last week. Hebron has been, Hebron and Plano were very, very similar in that there's not going to be I guess Hebron, and I guess Plano should, for that matter, might have a little bit more more of a kind of an uptick in firepower than they've had in previous years with Mackay Dorsey and Xavier Williams. But this Hebron team, it reminds me a lot of Plano teams you've seen in the past where there's like 6, 7, 8 guys that could potentially lead your team in scoring, just depending on who's hot, but it's never going to be any one guy that just goes nuts. Yep. They're always going to have a bunch of guys that kind of top out around like 12 points or so.
Yeah.
Whether it's David Deal, George Babineau, their big man down low, Noah McKinney, Alex Cotton, Nate Mercer. Ezekiel, I don't know how to pronounce the last name, Anoveron, but he's a nice little. When I saw him against Plano East, he was actually the hot man against East. But he had a nice little. He's another one of their bigs, but he's got a nice little throwback back to the basket game, hitting a lot of turnaround jumpers out of the post, stuff you don't really see at the high school level too much anymore. But they're a fun little team. And then Plano, like I mentioned, with Dorsey, who was the co-defensive player of the year out of District 9-6A last season. He's really come on strong offensively of late. Xavier Williams, who was a reserve last season, has really stepped up as far as complimenting Dorsey as far as being one of their lead scorers most nights. They've now started to kind of pick it up a bit. They got a big win over Hebron last week that really kind of boosts their chances as far as maybe climbing into the mix there. So, we got a long way to go. The big thing, though, at least as far as kind of big picture stuff is, you got to avoid the 4 seed.
Absolutely.
Because when you look at the playoffs, as far as those by-district matchups, that means you're going to draw the 1 seed out of 5-6A, which is McKinney right now. And let me tell you, man, McKinney is freaking terrifying. Yeah. I saw them last Friday against Prosper, and that was I believe what they've had now 4 straight wins by at least 27 points. They're just raining hell on that district, and they are not to be trifled with. I believe they're ranked number 10 in the state right now, and they're playing in such a good way right now. So, yeah, stay out of the 4 seed because imminent death awaits you in the first round out of 6A. And I don't know, it should be fun though. I love the nip and tuck playoff races down to the wire, and it looks like we're going to get just that in District 6A. Probably going to get that in a different capacity though over in Frisco. With Devin not being here, I'll pick up the reins a little bit, talk about one of his markets, and over in Frisco, you've got some nice little competition as far as the district championship races are concerned. Just a quick look at that. On the girls' side, you have 3 teams that have 12 wins right now. And I say that because not everybody has played the same number of games because COVID stuff has kind of shuffled the schedules a bit there. So Lone Star is in first place on the girls' side, 12-1. Memorial, 12-2 in second place. Frisco Centennial is in third at 12-3. And then I guess a half game back from Centennial is reigning Class 5A state champion Frisco Liberty at 11-3.
Jeez.
It's the 4 teams that if you're just going to power rank them at the start of the year, you expected all 4 of those teams to be in the mix because of the level of continuity that they all have coming back. They've all got so much star power. And that was, what made this race so much fun last year, and you're seeing the same stuff materialize. It is kind of noteworthy, just given all that Lone Star lost, that they have performed as well as they have. Their only loss actually wasn't even to one of those other 3 teams in that top cluster. It's actually to Reedy. So, yeah. So, nevertheless, Lone Star's picked up wins over a lot of those other powerhouses in the district. And, Kyla Deck, you knew what she was going to bring to the mix as far as a potential district MVP candidate. She's been great. Jordan Devon, who was I believe, either the newcomer of the year or the sophomore of the year. I don't know how that district shakes it out, but she won some sort of accolade for being a really awesome young new player to varsity. So, but she's kind of now taken a bit of a leap there. But they've also gotten a lot of help elsewhere with some new additions to the rotation, and they just reload. Lone Star's been great forever, it feels like, and should be no surprise to see them doing great once again. Memorial with Jasmine Lott, they're right in the mix. That was a team that finished second in district last season, I believe. And that's obviously been a strong year for them. Their only losses in district have been to Lone Star and Liberty. With Centennial, their top end firepower with Madison Ott and Layla Patel is, it's just absolutely devastating what those 2 can do when they're clicking on all cylinders in a given game, and they're going to have those 2 in the mix. That Centennial team, man, if there was was any one team last year during Liberty's big playoff run that was wondering what could have been, it had to have been Centennial, who had a chance to knock out Liberty from the free throw line in the regional quarterfinals, and they fell short in that capacity. That was the closest that any team played Liberty all postseason. So as Liberty then goes on to win state, and that's not to say that the same bounces would have gone that way for Centennial, but it definitely does leave a sense of like, oh man, what could we have done if we could have just won that game? And then Liberty obviously in fourth place. You can never count them out with all the experience that they have, and obviously the start of the year was a little bit janky for them, not having their MVP Jazzy Owens Barnett, who was battling an Achilles injury and whatnot. So, but they've nevertheless been able to stabilize. They're still going to play that same old just grinding defensive style of basketball under Ross Reedy that's been so central to their program success for years. And their only loss to Lone Star. They're only actually of their major losses, they did have one to Lone Star, but it was a game that was played almost entirely on Liberty's terms. It was 32-30, which is exactly the way that Liberty wants it. So, just imagine though if you're the one seed over in District 10 5A, who I believe right now that's Wiley East. Could be McKinney North. McKinney North might make a bit of a push in even that series there, but nevertheless it is Wiley East. And imagine though if that is your first entry in the postseason as you draw the reigning state champions.
Oh, that's yeah.
It's never a dull moment in Frisco ISD girls basketball. And then on the boys' side, you've got three teams that have 10 wins apiece. Atop the standings right now is Frisco Wakeland. They are 10-1. And then you have a tie for second place between Frisco and Frisco Heritage. Wakeland has kind of restored order there as far as being the team to beat. They did split the season series with Frisco, who was in second place. Frisco got the better of them in that first matchup, and then they rematched on Friday. This one a bit more authoritative for the Wolverines, a 73-54 victory. It was again a competitive game in the first half, and then Wakeland kind of put it to them a bit in the third quarter, outscored them 21-11. Got a huge night from Cooper Cisco, who's an all-area guy, Star Local Media. He had 28 points in that one, so Wakeland, kind of restoring order there as far as being the team to beat. I believe they entered the year as the projected district champion. With Frisco and Heritage being tied, that's seeing Heritage's inclusion there is a bit interesting. And Frisco's been a strong team all season. They were state ranked for a bit. With Heritage, though, they have just 3 playoff appearances in their history.
How many years have they been a school?
Oh, I don't know exactly the number, but it's not a program that has much of it. And I think they've only got just in that history 2 playoff wins period. So it's not a program that has a whole lot of just real tried and true tradition when it comes to boys basketball. So to see a year like this, and they've really kind of caught fire of late because they were hovering right around 500 for most of the first half of district. They were just 4-3 at one point, and then since then they've won 6 straight, including a win over Frisco. So you have that win over an upper echelon team in the district, kind of better kind of solidify this momentum that you're on, and you're not just taking advantage of the mid to lower rung teams in the district.
No question.
But they did have to gut out a pretty close one on Friday. They did have to hold off Independence for a 66-64 victory. They got 19 points apiece from Nicholas Jett and Julian Cleary. So some good things happening over in Heritage, and they got a big stretch coming up Friday though. They got games against Wakeland and Memorial, who's in fourth place. A really good Memorial team on the docket as far as this Friday and then next Tuesday. So a stretch that could very well decide whether this team's able to maybe climb one rung further, maybe get that 2 seed outright in the race over in 9-5A. So that's just a look at some things that are going on in Frisco. I want to just pass along some notes there. So then we can now look over at just kind of a look as far as what's kind of on the docket for this week. Because we obviously have kind of set the stage based on what's happened over this past week. So elsewhere in our coverage area, David, what is on your radar for this week?
Well, I'm going to talk about my coverage radar here in just a second, but since you're talking about you're taking over for Devin's portion here today, I want to extend Devin's portion a little bit.
Go for it.
Out east right here. I'm going to do my best, Devin. I promise. You've got a couple for Saxy. I know we get Saxy on this program a lot of viewers on here, so I want to just talk Saxy here a little bit.
A lively student body at Saxy.
Absolutely. So they got a couple big games coming up. They're in second place in their district right now. They're 9-5 overall, 5-1 in their district. Tomorrow night they got a big game against Garland. Garland's in fourth place in their district. They're 11-2 overall, and this is a game that Saxy, if they win this game, they'll get one. It seems like they'll get one of the top 3 seeds for sure. So Garland, they actually lost to Garland 49-44 on the 6th of this month. In that game, Saxe fell behind, in the first half pretty big. They only had 15 points at halftime. And they were trailing 27-15 at halftime. It's just kind of a low-scoring game for them. And then they turned it on the third quarter. They outscored Garland 22-6.
Yeah.
So they took a lead going into the fourth quarter. Then Garland kind of flipped the script and outscored them to win by 5 points, I believe it was. So 49-44. Obviously Saxe's going to look for a little bit of revenge in this game too. In that game, their quarterback, Alex Orjai, who's now playing basketball.
He can just do everything.
He can do everything. He scored 16 points for them in that game.
Goodness.
So, I'm trying to learn more about Saxe too. So, he had a big game for them. Dylan McKeon, he had 12 points for them. Kai Smith had 10. So it's going to be interesting to see, what kind of balanced scoring they get tomorrow against Garland to kind of see if they can get the revenge game as well too.
Okay.
So they have that game tomorrow, and then next week, next Tuesday, they have a game against the district leader, Wiley.
Okay.
So I mean, if they win those two games right there, I mean, Saxe setting itself up for a lot, so pretty good seed right there heading into the playoffs.
Which is good because, that program, you think of what they were just a few years ago, and they were just like the one sport at Saxe that wasn't amazing at everything. And now since hiring Zach Meixel, they've really turned the corner as far as being a perennially competitive team, which is really nice to see. Elsewhere, though.
We haven't touched on the Colony just yet.
Not yet.
So
what you got on the Colony?
Let's check on the Colony. They are coming back to basketball this week after a little bit of a quarantine.
Okay.
And they don't have any games tomorrow or today or tomorrow, but starting on Wednesday, they're going to be playing 4 games in 4 days. So, and this is right in the heat of the district schedule right there. So Wednesday at Sherman, Thursday at Wiley East. I'll be out there for that game.
Okay.
Friday against McKinney North, and then Saturday they'll conclude that schedule with afternoon game at Rock Hill.
Okay. Wow, those last two are big.
Yeah, those last two are big. So it's going to be interesting to see how well they're going to be able to withstand all those 4 games right there. They actually haven't played Rock Hill yet this year. Rock Hill's, I think they're third place in the district right now.
They are. They used to be. I mean, they were state ranked for a good chunk of the first half of the year, and they were up until they lost games to both Lovejoy and McKinney North and knocked them a bit back in the pack. But that was a team that, at least early on, looked like they might be able to contend for a district title, which, considering it's a first-year varsity program, impressive. Yeah.
And, you didn't have, hardly the spring or the summer to get back to get some chemistry because of all the COVID.
Yeah.
So, I mean, props to them. And those two teams are going to be playing twice, including February 9th, which is the last game of the regular season.
Okay.
And the Cougars, they played Sherman once this year. They beat them by 1 point, 72-71. And then Wiley East, who they're going to play on Thursday, they beat them by 30 points, 82-52. So, I mean, if they can, get those first two games, that'd be huge. Because right now they're in 4th place in their district. And, 4th place in that district looks like it's going to be a game against probably Wakeland right there. Yeah,
as of right now, at least, it would appear that way.
So, I mean, and this is a Colony team. They made the playoffs, quite a bit. They were second place in their district last year. Obviously, they lost their district MVP, Keith Miller, who's now playing football at Colorado. But they still got some really good pieces to that team right there. Tay Mosher, who's already signed with East Carolina, he can go off. He can score 25, 30 points a game if he wants to. And then another good player on their team is Caden Sclafani. He's a Chadron State pledge right there, and a game I saw game the other week against Lovejoy. He had 19 points in that game. He's just a strong 3-point shooter out there. And then they have some depth players as well too. Grayson Ryan, a junior, who's Cleve Ryan's son right there, the head coach.
Cool.
Braxton McCutcheon, he's a senior as well too. And Jaden Davis, I think he's a senior, so hopefully I get that right. Edit me if you can. But he's been really good for them. Jaden Cotto, who's the brother of Araya Cotto, who's playing on the girls basketball team. So they got some good depth points at this this team right here. So obviously, if they can win these 2 games right here, like I said, it'll be huge for them. And obviously, one more thing I want to say is that Tay Mosier, he actually scored his 1,000th point recently in a game against Denison.
That's a nice little milestone.
Nice little milestone. And the coach was happy to do it that he got it in the first quarter, so he didn't have to worry about it the rest of the game. So just congratulations to you, Tay. I've talked to you a few times. Just a real class act kid, really, amazing competitor. So, just big props to you.
Awesome. What about, I know there's a big game coming up on Friday over in Lake Dallas that I'm sure you wanted to touch on a little bit.
Absolutely. Lake Dallas is going to be hosting Grapevine. And this is a game that's more than likely going to, especially if Lake Dallas wins, that could decide the district title.
Okay.
The 6-5-8 title. This is a game that was, the first matchup was played on January 5th. And this is like one of the few probably the only game that Lake Dallas has had close in district play. And this, Lake Dallas actually won 69-66 in overtime. And this is a game that they're actually trailing by 4 points in the fourth quarter. So they got out this win. Georgia Elliott, who's one of the junior jump shooters on this team, she had 29 points in that game right there. A sophomore, Cameron Richardson, who's really played well this year, she had 18 points in that game as well too. So I mean, and both of those teams, like they're just on fire right now. Lake Dallas, they've won 12 straight games and they haven't lost since December 5th.
Okay.
And they're 10-0 in district play, 12 straight games, and ever since that loss to Mesquite Horn, 45-35 on December 6th, which was actually their last loss, they've won their average games by an average of 27.7 points.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and that includes even if you factor in the overtime win against Grapevine, and a game also non-district game that you had against LD Bell. So even if you include those 2 games, they're still winning by almost 28 points a game. So and obviously you're probably not going to see a 28-point differential in Friday's game.
It seems unlikely.
Yeah.
But, crazier things have happened.
Crazy things have happened. But Grapevine's, they're just up there as well too. Grapevine's 16-4 in the year. They're 8-1 district play. Both teams are state ranked. Lake Dallas last week is number 16 in Class 5A.
Okay.
So, and Grapevine's I think is like around 20-21 right there. So, I mean, this is going to be another big battle right there. It's just whoever's going to make the most amount of plays down the stretch is going to win it.
On my end, as far as a couple things that are on my radar, you got a pretty big game over in 5-6A on the girls' side on Tuesday out in Denton. You get the much anticipated rematch between Allen and Geyer. These are the 2 teams that are at least currently vying for the district championship out there. Allen still undefeated in district. No one's been able to knock them off yet. They've had some close calls, but they continue to just click along and just win, baby, win. And they are 24-3 on the season. They're up to number 9 in the state rankings, which is pretty impressive when you look at just the it's a team that had. I mean, last year was just such a strange year. You're coming off the state semifinal appearance, from a couple years earlier, and then last season they ran the table in the first half of district play, and then I think they won just 1 game in the second half, and they just had such a rough finish to the season. But they've obviously been a much steadier product for head coach Teresa Durham and her Lady Eagles so far. You got to see them earlier in the season against Little Elm in a game with Mackenzie Worm, who's just been just such a matchup nightmare with her size and length down low. Zoe Jackson, a Butler commit, running the show at point guard. They've found a way. They lost a lot else from the rotation, but they've piecemealed it together with enough really quality rotation players. Laura Bello has been a player that's really helped kind of fill that void left last year that Zoe McCrary kind of held down low. Just gives them another option in the interior alongside Worm. And they've, this first matchup against Geyer was right down to the wire. Allen only won this game by 2 points, 64-62. And you look at kind of the quarter by quarter scores, and it was no team really kind of had much of an edge over the other most of the way. So I don't know if we get kind of the same thing on Tuesday or not, but nevertheless, this one, if Allen is able to win, it would give them a very, very nice cushion with respect to the district title race over in 5-6A. And then on Friday, another girls matchup. This one though back in 6-6A. I mean, this matchup is always going to be on my radar anytime it pops up, and that is Plano East and Plano. It's become, kind of the must-see attraction in Plano ISD basketball, and just with what, with what East is doing right now. Obviously, talked about them in great length last week. We almost had our first case of the podcast jinx, surface. So, naturally, after I spend a segment talking about how awesome East has been, East has been so far this season, they go out on Tuesday and then have to scrape out a game winner against Louisville, which I was there for that one. And, it would have been, it would have been quite the jinx for the podcast to heap praise on Plano East and then for them to turn around and then have their first district loss. But no, Tiana Amos came through in the clutch and knocked down a couple big free throws and then a game winner in the paint with 1 second left. That ends up giving them the win over Louisville. And, so they avoided the podcast jinx. But yes, they draw Plano. It's a big week for Plano as far as potentially climbing the district standings. They were in 4th place at the midpoint, which would not have foreseen that coming. When you look at what this team had coming into the season, they were ranked in, I believe, 6 or 7 heading into the season, and they were. They fell on. They had a really tough time kind of keeping their core together just because of quarantines and whatnot. And that's a team that had a bit of a shutdown earlier in the season and just not a whole lot of time to really build a whole lot of continuity. But they were able to avenge a prior district loss against Hebron last week in pretty decisive fashion. So a nice confidence boost for them heading into this week because they have games Tuesday against Louisville, who, like I just mentioned, Louisville, which took East right down to the wire. I believe that first matchup between Plano and Louisville was just as competitive. Louisville's a really, really tough defensive team. Obviously, Layla Lawrence, she was the co-defensive player of the year over in 6XA last year. Maya Dotson, their sophomore, she was honestly probably, impressed me more than anybody else on the floor in that game against Plano East. She was all over the place on both ends of the floor making plays. With all that sophomore and underclass talent that Plano East has, it was Louisville's little sophomore Dotson that really did a good job keeping them in front early on. She was impressive. Haley Allen had some big moments in there. That's going to be a really tough matchup for Plano on Tuesday. And then they turn right around then and they have to play Plano East. And, with Plano having been kind of the standard bearer in Plano ISD girls basketball, I think I mentioned this last week, but just the run that they've been on as far as kind of taking the mantle as far as the team to beat in Plano. And then East now, I didn't have the note in front of me as far as when the last time East swept the season series against Plano would be, but East won the first matchup 41-37, just an absolute defensive grinder of a basketball game, which is, what you've come to expect between these two teams. But I would expect nothing less on Friday in this rematch. It is going to be at Plano at 7 p.m. So maybe the home court advantage is enough to sway momentum in the favor of the Lady Wildcats, but that's going to be a big one. And then the game on the boys' side is honestly just as pivotal as we were talking about earlier with the closely knit the playoff race in 6XA is right now. Mm-hmm. That game's going to be over at East that same time on Friday. That should be a good one. So, that's just kind of a look at some of the stuff that is on our docket later on this week.
I actually got something on my docket tonight, too.
Okay.
Big game out of Prosper between Little Elm and Prosper for girls basketball.
Okay.
And Prosper right now, they hold the 4th seed in the district 5-6A, but Little Elm, they're only a game behind them, and Little Elm's already beat them once this year. So and with the district play kind of winding down here, this is a huge game for Little Elm. It seems like this is like a must-win game right here because not only do you get the season sweep right there, you're going to leapfrog into the 4th place right there. Even though the records are even, you get that head-to-head tiebreaker because you swept them this year. So Little Elm, they're kind of looking, to get back on the winning note right now. They've lost four straight games coming into tonight, and all of them they've been averaged by almost 17 points. So it's a game that Little Elm really needs really badly. They've lost to Geyer, McKinney, Braswell, and Allen. So and like in a couple of those games right there, they barely shot 30% from the field. So hopefully they can kind of turn that around a little bit against a Prosper team. They didn't make the playoffs last year, but they made it 2 years ago.
They went all the way to I believe that was the regional final year where they had a massive lead on Allen in that game with Jordan Oliver in that squad that had the chops to make state that year.
Yeah. So, yep, that's tonight, 6:00 over there at Prosper. So, obviously, Little Elm, they made the playoffs last year for the first time since the 2016-17 season. Okay. They got a new head coach in Kristen Coffey last year. Obviously, they had an outstanding freshman last year who's now a sophomore, Amarachi Kimpson, who was actually our newcomer of the year last year for the all-area basketball. So, and she's picked up where she left off right there, averaging over 20 points a game right here. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to watch her again tonight. Obviously, it's interesting to kind of see what Prosper can do as far as like counteracting that right there. So, good game tonight.
Should be fun.
Yep.
Alrighty, so let's we can close up shop and get on out of here, David. So yes, that is a look at some of the notable happenings going on right now in our coverage area with respect to high school basketball, and we may be back next week to talk about some more of it. Always a fun time. So yes, that'll do it for this episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. Until next time, folks, you take care. We will talk to y'all later.